enjoyed that tour of the Guitar Factory.
Oh yeah, that sounds really.
Hi, Pete. The recording has started.
Okay, Amy, thank you. Well, it looks like it's noon. I guess we could call this meeting to order here. Would someone like to call the roll to see if we have a quorum here?
Mr. Chair, this is Erica McConnell. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Member LaFrance?
Here.
Member Allard? Member Constant?
Here.
Member Kennedy?
Here.
And Chair Peterson?
I'm present.
You have a quorum.
Well, fantastic. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. And the first thing we have on our agenda is a look at SB 39, which is a bill that was introduced by Senator Shower, I believe it is. And there's several provisions in this bill. And I think Mr. Gates has sent us a little bit of an analysis that he had done. And I'm wondering if he would like to go through that analysis for the committee today. Mr. Gates?
Hi, yes, I'm here and I will. And I was just realizing here that it looks like in the things that I had sent and had Ms. McConnell forwarded for me, that it didn't actually include the bill SB 39. So I'm double checking that. Yeah, and I apologize for that. If we could send that out, but you know, what we're looking at are our summaries and interpretation of the bill. So I guess we've got my memorandum up here, and I did sort of a quick look and looking at the statutes and in the context of the statutes that were being amended by this proposed bill. I guess, first of all, the bill was introduced in January. Looks like the first day, maybe pre-filed, and it's hasn't had any changes or iterations. I did not look at the hearings it's had, but it has hearings upcoming in the, I believe it's legislative affairs. That's at the bottom of my memorandum. Yeah, it has two hearings. The State Affairs Committee on the 30th and again on April 1st. So, you know, you as individuals could, of course, call in, listen, testify, and so forth. So I also had found that, going back up to the top, that there was a sectional analysis from Legislative Services, and it pretty much gives a brief 1-2 sentences of each section of the bill and what it does, and that was helpful. I read the bill contents myself, but it seems very accurate on point. The Alaska Municipal League had a letter in February to Senator Shower that namely objected to Section 22 that was amended Title 29 to add a new subsection that would require, and we talked about this last time, that would not allow a municipality to mail a ballot to a voter unless the voter had affirmatively requested that ballot. And you'll see in my analysis below that's not going to apply to Anchorage as a home rule municipality. So the main thing that I was asked is, what are the effects of this bill on Anchorage and our elections, municipality of Anchorage and our elections? And so I made in my interpretation section just two things that we might see happen as an effect of this bill, the way it's currently written. One is change to the voter registration list. As we all know, I believe we had changes where PFD applications that were received would automatically put the PFD applicant's name to the voter registration database if it wasn't already there, and that was automatic. And the change in the bill, the first few sections, will require instead of this being an automatic processing, that the PFD applicant, they have to have a box they can check that says that that clearly indicates for requesting to be registered to vote in Alaska. And so without that box checked, it's not going to be an automatic registration process based on the PFD application. And so that's a big part of this bill, sections 1 through 5, and some of the conforming sections to provisions related to the PFD, entitled 43 of the statutes and so forth. I guess the next effect we might see that would impact Anchorage are amendments to the Alaska statutes that list out criminal offenses, election offenses. It's chapter 1556, and all of those apply to local elections. Actually, if we could go up, not quite well. Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Gates. I just wanted to mention for the record that Miss Allard has joined us. Please continue.
Sure, thank you. So under interpretation, my second bullet, there's 2 criminal offenses being amended by this bill, and those would be applicable to local elections, including Anchorage. One is criminalizing ballot harvesting, becomes Class A misdemeanor. And the language here, and I may be able to pull up later, is a person cannot have more than a single ballot that's not theirs, unless it's the ballot of a family member or their caregiver. There's a number of exceptions, or if they're an election worker or a postal worker or delivery person. So that addresses ballot harvesting, for example, the neighborhood gets together and one person takes, 20 of their neighbors' ballots to the drop box, or, some organization hosts a ballot party and takes 100 of them and so forth. So that wouldn't be allowed anymore. And the second criminal offense is prohibiting unauthorized opening of sealed ballot certificates or envelopes. And I would mention here that the ballot harvesting offense as a misdemeanor is something that we can amend into our code in Title 28. 28, 100, 110 of our code has a similar offense, unlawful interference with voting of the first degree, I believe it's titled, and the language for ballot harvesting can be added to our code as well. So that's kind of the summary. And if you wanted me to go down a little bit, I would jump through, I guess, my summary of the sections and what they mean to Anchorage, if anything. So section 1 to 5 is about the PFD. I won't cover that again unless somebody can interrupt and ask at any time. Also, please ask me if I need to speak up or speak more clearly.
We can hear you fine, Dean. And if anybody has questions, just ask for the queue in the over here in the chat. Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, great. I just opened my chat box so I can see as well. So section 6, this adds two new sections to state statute. One's about track and chain of custody. This is more about the state elections. One adds an election offense hotline, and it's not really clear if that hotline will be available for local election violation reporting. The way it's worded is the hotline needs to be staffed and available when absentee and early voting opens and on election day when the polls are open for state elections. So it's only going to be operated, in October, November, and maybe during the primary in August. That's not really helpful to Anchorage, but it's not quite clear how that would be implemented. But there's an election hotline to be established by the statute. So the next several sections don't have any effect on Anchorage. They amend chapter 1515 and 1520. 1515 is the state's procedures for conducting the state elections, and chapter 1520 is special provisions for elections, so like absentee voting and some by mail and overseas voters. And those again are relevant specifically to state elections and their special provisions. So some of these are similar to our Title 28. They don't affect us, but they're interesting for comparison. So I just noted one, for example, Section 12 of SB 39 prohibits absentee voting by facsimile in state election. And so they do address some parts of electronic voting. There's no email voting. There's no voting by email, by sending a marked ballot by email in state elections now. So we have some differences in our code, but as a home rule, we're not required to follow these sections. I guess next to sections 18 and 20, and I covered this recently, and I bolded in italicized our code section 28-200-110 that we can similarly amend to prohibit ballot harvesting and ballot collection. Section 21 is about the lieutenant governor making a report, no effect on Anchorage. Section 22, a lot of people were most interested in this, and I looked carefully. This adds a new section to AS 292610. And I quoted it here: not merely in the general special election ballot to a voter, unless the voter affirmatively requests to vote by mail in that election. So this section, AS 292610, it's not a restriction on home rule municipalities if we decide to do otherwise, and we already have no code. So as written, it has no effect on Anchorage elections. It might be wise to monitor there's amendments to the bill as it goes forward if there's an attempt to extend this coverage to home rule municipalities. This is the section that Ketchikan Gateway Bureau wrote specifically about, and the Alaska Municipal League spent much of its letter about the bill, speaking to and objecting to. I think that this section would cause those municipalities to have a multi-step process where, you need to contact the voter, probably some alert, email or postcard, contact us if you want to vote by mail, getting that application to vote by mail, and then mailing back the actual ballot, and then marking it and sending back the ballot. And so it's a lot more steps than our Anchorage vote at home or vote by mail process, where we don't have that dual back and forth and multiple steps. So this would probably, I guess, cut into attempts to have vote by mail processes in municipalities that this is applicable to. So there were several sections after that in the bill. Most of them relate to conforming amendments in other parts of state statute and transition measures. So I've noted the two hearings I mentioned, and that's on the legislature's website. And I guess that's about my interpretation of SB 39.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Actually,
Gates.
if you would like, I did want to share with you the ballot harvesting language. I think that would be of interest if I could share my screen with that part of the bill.
That would be great.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I think I got that up right. So here, this amends 1556-035. It's the crime of unlawful interference with voting in the second degree. Pardon me, I said first degree earlier. And this is a class A misdemeanor, and this adds that new paragraph among the other multiple acts that constitute that crime. This is knowingly the mental state, collected ballot from another voter unless they possess only one other voter's ballot, and the person's family, household, or caregiver, and then the exceptions for workers, official duties as an official, postal service worker, private commercial delivery service, Now, I think that there's a couple maybe issues with this language, and one of them, and again, this is applicable to local elections, but it would be prosecutable by the state. And so if we want municipal prosecutors to do this, because it's a misdemeanor, we would need to amend 28, 200, 110 with something similar. I think a couple issues with this is I'm not certain that the allowed persons to take a ballot is includes enough people. There's maybe with the power of attorney or something like that. And I haven't tried to brainstorm more, but I think that maybe it's too narrow, or maybe it leaves holes. For example, private commercial delivery service. Could somebody create one, and all they do is collect ballots, during election time, but they got their business license as a delivery service. So, maybe there's some weaknesses here, and I'm just speaking hypothetically. Of course, doing some what if situations. I guess one other issue that comes up is possessing only one other voter's ballot, and if they're a household member. So, if in your family of 5, and okay, maybe one kid's underage, but you got 3 other people that vote in your household, and you want to take them all to the drop box, and this says, well, maybe you need to make 3 trips, so one at a time. You can't take your wife's and your 2 adult children, their ballots to the drop box at the same time. And maybe this also discriminates against large families, or maybe some. Well, I don't want to throw out things without thinking it through, but I think it might discriminate against certain household situations, and it's maybe too limiting in terms of being able to take a person's ballot. So maybe it's intended that way. I guess we will see going forward about that language.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Gates. Yeah, I noticed that when I was reading the bill too, that you if you're taking it to a drop box, you're only supposed to have your ballot and one other person's ballot. And there are, households that have several generations of people living in it. So it's not uncommon that there is more than 2 voters in a household. So that provision, they might need to amend that one at some point in time. But I've actually agree with the ballot harvesting idea. I'm not a fan of ballot harvesting. I just see the potential for abuse there. And they did have a problem in North Carolina with that here a couple of years ago. And that was a congressional election, and they had to void that election and redo it completely. And so obviously that was a huge expense and a delay on getting the representative seated in Congress. So anyway, we would certainly hope to avoid a situation like that in the future. So I myself would be in favor of prohibiting ballot harvesting here in the municipality as well. But so do we have members of the committee that have any questions or comments about SB 39 and Mr. Gates' analysis of it?
Hi, Pete. It's Jamie. Can I say something?
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I think there's some really great changes in it. I agree with you when it comes to the ballot harvesting. I've seen it done here in Alaska, and you're right. It's probably not a good thing, but I really do think this is a good bill. And if we could more align our code with it, I definitely think it's the way to go. Thanks for presenting this, Dean. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Any questions or comments from any other members of the committee? I see Ms. Kennedy is typing. Go ahead, Ms. Kennedy.
Wow, that's pretty good. You can tell what I'm typing or that I'm typing. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just kind of had a question in regard to where we might want to take advantage of this legislation to help us with our question about doing online voting, because we've certainly expressed some concerns about it. We do it if somebody really requests it, but I know Ms. Jones has said, that they just have some real reservations about how we actually do that and secure any kind of a ballot that's going back and forth there in cyberspace. So anyway, so I was just wondering if there was any thoughts about how we might help use this bill to maybe better craft some language in our own code that would basically get us off the hook, from trying to have some kind of an election process or a voting process that maybe isn't really what we're real comfortable with. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. I am strongly in opposition to this bill. I see it as part of a pattern nationally to make it harder for individuals to vote, and I will work diligently to see it does not pass the House.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Well, and I was actually a little surprised when I read this and saw that it prohibited fax, voting by fax, because that's something that has been going on for a number of years. And I think that actually might be a more safe way to allow voting from people that are out of state than the email voting. Ms. Allard, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I was kind of involved with the voting by fax in 2019 because I was concerned also of how many people actually vote by fax, and it could be beneficial. But when we did our research, when I worked for the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, my main goal was to make sure military people could, and obviously that would open it up for others out of state, as you've just said. But the reason why they ended up saying no voting by fax was because when we looked into it, at the time in 2018, there were only 2 people military that voted by fax. I was very shocked, but I saw the numbers, and that was the entire state. So it wasn't worth it financially and fiscally, just to kind of bring light to that situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. And I see Mr. Gates has a comment. Mr. Gates?
Sorry, I was unmute myself. Yes, I understand that Mrs. Kennedy was asking if anything in the bill helps with online voting systems and so forth. And I did want to point out one part of it here in response. I'm going to share my screen again, if I may. So here in section 6 of the bill, it talks about ballot security and chain of custody. And, this doesn't sort of pinpoint online voting, but it says the director shall provide by regulation a system to account for original of each use and unused ballot. And, if any of them are used, electronically generated ballots. So if they do set up a system and so forth, I think that this section sort of speaks to it, making sure there's a chain of custody and a paper record for every, I guess, electronic ballot. Maybe that includes online or so forth. To me, it's not as clear that it's specifically speaking to getting the online voting systems or equipment, but it seems to accommodate it by the language. But again, this is all only for state elections, so it doesn't have an effect on us directly, but maybe we watch how the director for the Division of Elections implements this regulation and so forth. I don't really know, but I thought I would point out that provision, and I guess I didn't really look into this section really carefully since I saw it's not applicable to Anchorage, which is what I was mostly focused on. But it's got these requirements of such a system, and of course you're welcome to read it more thoroughly. Mrs. Kennedy, section 6 perhaps might help you. I do think that on the state's website with the bill. There were documents submitted from the Public Interest Legal Foundation and the Heritage Foundation that talk about best practices and so forth. And I didn't have time to look thoroughly at those, but I think they spoke to the best practices that we might see reflected here in that section for chain of custody.
Okay. Well, thank you for that additional analysis, Dean. Any additional comments or questions about SB 39? Oh, I did notice that it did create it. The state is attempting, if this passes, to create a hotline for people to call in if they think they might be witnessing some sort of voter irregularity at the polling place or at the drop box maybe. But they'd have, it says that they were planning to have that line monitored 24 hours a day during the election season. So it'd be interesting if that actually happens. Any other comments or questions about SB 39? Not seeing any. Let's go further along in our agenda and get an update from Ms. McConnell about the ongoing mayoral election.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by reporting on the tours of the election center that we offered in the 2 weeks before ballots were mailed. We had 6 tours scheduled, and each tour had the capacity for 6 people. A couple of the tours were full. One tour only had 1 person, so there was definitely unused tour capacity, but each tour occurred. There was no tour where nobody came. I think they went very well. And the only sort of generalized comment, you know, everyone has different comments and questions when they come through, but the only generalized comment that I wanted to share with the committee is that, you know, there were people who came through on the tour who were skeptical of vote by mail, but at the end of every single tour, people reported to us, I feel comfortable with Anchorage's election. What you have shown me on this tour makes me feel confident that Anchorage's elections are secure. So that was very inspiring. Moving on, all of our election worker teams are activated and working hard. As of yesterday, we have received 8,482 ballot return envelopes. I'm not sure exactly how many came in today, but we're at, you know, approximately 8,500 as of yesterday. We, as I have informed the entire assembly, we are live streaming the cameras from the election center so people are able to watch us from the comfort of their homes. It is a complicated YouTube link, so I can't, doesn't make sense to say it here, but we do have the link posted on the main page of the elections website. So if people want to watch us at work, they can go find that link and watch us live streaming on YouTube. That's my report on how things are going.
Well, thank you, Ms. McConnell. So if could someone you think just do a internet search of the Anchorage vote center or election center and come up with the YouTube connection, do you think?
I think that's possible. The way it is posted on YouTube is it has the current date and then it's called Municipality of Anchorage Election Center. So if someone were to Google that, it's possible they could find it. I haven't tried that, but it is its own YouTube channel. So once you do find that, you can subscribe to the channel and then it is easy to come back to it each day.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that. I see Ms. Kennedy has a question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that's a pretty neat thing too that we're doing in terms of being able or allowing people to be able to watch the happenings at the election center. I think that's really neat. So thank you for getting that up. Um, my question though is in regard to some of the poll watchers, the requests from different campaigns to have people come in and watch the ballot envelope, whatever that process with determining people are actually valid voters, and then obviously the ballot counting. So I just wondered, were you having campaign people like sign up for that, or just kind of letting you know in advance how many people might be there? Or anyway, what kind of a crowd do you expect from different campaigns? Do you have an idea?
Through the chair, Ms. Kennedy, great question. So election observers are regulated through a section of Title 28 in code. They have to register with us in advance, and we have a registration form. The candidate or the organization that is supporting or opposing a ballot proposition that the observer is representing must train that observer on the observer handbook, which is adopted by reference in code by the Assembly. And the observer is then issued a badge. So each candidate or organization is permitted one observer at each vote center and up to 4 observers at the election center, with the caveat that if the number of observers impedes the processing of the election, there are procedures to reduce the number. So, if all 15 mayoral candidates sent 4 observers, that would be a problem. That has not occurred. We have had a number of observers register, and we have had some observers already come to the election center and observe. So that is happening, and it is going smoothly. Excuse me.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. McConnell and Ms. Kennedy. And Ms. Jones just typed in the chat, you're welcome. Yes, I think she was being thanked for organizing the YouTube video. That actually was a fantastic idea. It just really shows how the process works, and shows that we're open to allowing people to watch us. We have nothing to hide. So, and I just got a thumbs up from that comment. Any other comments or questions about the ongoing mayoral election?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Kennedy?
Thanks. I guess I'm just going to mention that it's not just a mayoral election.
Oh, that's right.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's definitely a serious number of school board candidates on there too. We're going to be getting to the audience participation part of the meeting here in just a few minutes. And then Ms. Riley will be able to make a comment. Any other questions or comments about the current ongoing municipal election? I just happen to think that I believe the accessible vote centers are going to be opening next Monday. Is that correct, Ms. McConnell?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. They will open on Monday, and they will be open from 9 to 6 on weekdays, and 10 to 4 on Saturday, noon to 5 on Sunday, and then of course 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on election day.
And what are those locations, just in case people aren't aware?
Sure. There's a vote center at the Eagle River Town Center, which is the same building as the library and the city offices up in the center of Eagle River. There's a vote center at City Hall, and there is a vote center at the Lusac Library in the Assembly Chambers.
Fantastic. All right. Any other comments or questions before we go to audience participation? Not seeing any. Is there members of the public that would like to make a comment? Miss.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, this is Ethan.
Mr. Haberman?
Yeah, but I'll wait for
Go ahead.
party. Okay. Let me set my timer. My name is Ethan Haberman. I follow the public process. When a public process is inappropriate, a decision made by the governing body is more likely public interest. I don't think there's question among you all that if there's anyone that has been monitoring the Anchorage elections and elections in other parts of the state for the last several years, I've been one of the principal parties who's witnessing this scenario. I'd like to thank Assemblymember Constant for his remarks, that I already had planned to address concern. Legislatures in states across the country are introducing legislation not to in a wrong way. Effectively, the results would be making it denying the people in the United States to have an opportunity to vote when they should have that opportunity. And this is a result of the November election. The November election that happened nationally, there was a false narrative out there, and we witnessed the outcome that went at the Capitol in January. It was horrible, and now there's court cases going on, parts of the country dealing with the play of that false narrative. I would caution Alaskans out there to be careful what legislation they introduce in the state in dealing with changing election law. It should not be a situation where it discourages people to vote and deny their right to vote. I understand the concern of making things fair and honest. If there's anyone that has addressed that concern, it's been me. But what's going on right now is not for that reason. The motives are clear. It's a way to make sure that people who should be able to vote are denied the right to vote. And that ends my comments. Thank you, and with all due respect.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Is there any other member of the public that would like to make a comment? I see Ms. Riley's hand is up. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to quickly say that I immediately, when given the instructions, went to YouTube, searched under Anchorage Municipal Election, and immediately popped up the election center. It took me about 30 seconds to subscribe and take a look. So it's easy peasy, especially for us old people. So thank you very much for that.
Well, great. Well, thanks for letting us know that it's fairly easily found. Any other
Hello?
Comments?
Mr. Peterson, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Louis Imbriani. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of SB 39. I did have a question, however. I guess I could email it, but I did want to put it out there. What type of accommodations are being made at vote centers or at the polling places for people who cannot tolerate a mask? Are they allowed to wear face shields, or is that completely off the table where they wear a mask or they have to vote by mail? Like what happens if they didn't get a ballot? So that's what I'm just trying to figure out to help pass on to people who have been asking these questions that I've seen to help better assist them. Can they wear a face shield to go vote? Can they wear a face shield to watch at the polls, or is that a no-go?
Mr. Chair, I'll start to respond to that question if you wouldn't mind.
Go ahead, Jones.
And Erica can jump in. Mr. Imbriani, we want everyone to vote. We want all qualified registered voters to vote. Even though we use a universal ballot delivery system to mail ballots to qualified registered voters, The vote at home, vote by mail system offers lots of opportunities to vote. Voters can vote their mail ballot. So that's one option for voters. If they didn't get a mailed ballot, they can call our call center at 243-VOTE, 243-8683, and they can get a replacement ballot. If they're not at home, they can call and get a temporary ballot mailed to their temporary address. Then there's another option for voters who are sick with COVID or sick with other illnesses or that are disabled. We have a system called special needs ballots, and those voters just need to call the election center again, 243-VOTE, 8683, and our call center workers will set up a time on Monday or Tuesday, election day, for a special needs ballot to be delivered. The voter can vote the ballot and the special needs workers will return the ballot to the election center. Finally, you are correct. Voters that can't wear a mask can wear a face shield and come on into the vote centers. And Erica mentioned that the 3 vote centers are at City Hall, the Lusac, and Eagle River Town Center. And finally, Mr. Imbriani, I would strongly, strongly recommend that if people have questions, please have them call us. We appreciate your help educating people, but there are lots of nuances and details in the code and options that we can offer voters if you'd have them give us a call. Again, 243-VOTE, 8683.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I noticed that Mr. Constant has written something in the chat. He says he also asked about poll workers and people monitoring the elections. And so I believe they would also be able to wear shields as well. Is that correct, Ms. Jones?
They may not, Mr. Chair. Is that correct, Mr. Imbriani? You wanted to know about poll workers or poll watchers?
I was asking about both. So people who go to vote and then people who are also working, because they have to go inside. So that was just my question: is are they able to wear shields or do they have to wear a mask?
Okay, so let's take that separately. You want to know if election workers working at the accessible vote centers or the Anchorage vote centers have to wear a mask or a face shield?
Yes, and poll workers.
Okay, well, let's do them separately. The election workers are municipal employees. They are required to wear masks and face shields at the vote centers. Employees were asked that at hire, and Erica can talk to you more about that. So the second question is about, we call them observers, as Ms. Kennedy asked earlier, and Erica explained the rules regarding observers. So first of all, an observer is going to be contacting us on behalf of a candidate or a proposition. So that person is working for someone. The public isn't entitled to be an observer. You can call a campaign and sign up, but otherwise it's not just members of the public. And so our position is that observers must wear a mask. They don't have to wear a face shield. They don't have to wear a mask and a face shield like our workers at the vote centers. But if an observer cannot wear a mask, then we're going to ask the campaign to send another observer or to have the observer watch the live feed.
There you go.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I just want to note that it's unusual for us to do back and forth question answering for members of the public to testify, Mr. Imbriani. And it's not unwanted in this context because it's a good opportunity, but it's not our standard procedure and it's not precedent.
Right. Well, I just think it's important that people feel comfortable with our vote by mail system, and so I'm allowing a little more room today.
Totally get it and agree with it. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that this is not the norm.
You're correct, sir. Any other comments from members of the public?
Mr. Chair, I probably should make one more comment that that we believe that that the information that we're providing, like offering the campaigns to, have a different observer or use the live stream, we believe that that's a reasonable accommodation. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. And then I don't know if Erica has anything to add about that. I understand this is probably not directly in order, and if Mr. Imbriani would like to email Erica and I directly, we could probably provide a more detailed response. But I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything that Erica would like to add.
Thank you, Barbara. No, I think you covered everything. I have nothing to add.
Okay, fantastic. And I want to thank our entire election team. They're doing great work over there, and just sort of getting warmed up in this election. It's really going to be picking up over the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the 6th. And I see Ms. Allard typed into the chat. Thank you, Pete. And you're welcome, Ms. Allard. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee or from members of the public? Not seeing any hands raised.
I don't know if
just said thank you to Ms. Jones and Ms. McConnell.
Pete, Christopher here.
Go ahead, Chris.
I don't know if anybody said it, but I want to make sure we say both the election closes at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, April 6th. And so if you're listening, make sure you get your ballots back by 8 p.m. on April the 6th. And also, you can drive up to the Captain Cook Hotel right now to get a vaccine without an appointment.
That's right. Fantastic news. I'm hoping that it doesn't cause a traffic jam like the one over at Dempsey Anderson Ice Arena did. But it's good that the people are still trying to get vaccinated. We want that to continue. So, all right, not seeing any more questions or comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, and thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great afternoon.